And then we're going to start climbing finally. It's 10 hours, 11 minutes, 56 seconds. What's the maximum amount of time you can survive in peak? It's a question that's plagued me ever since I first made it to the summit. As you cross the threshold into this beautiful mountaintop, the game briefly flashes how many days your journey all the way across the island took. Now, honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't notice this little detail. In fact, you might not even be aware the game has a day and night cycle unless you played all the way up the optional difficulties into Ascent 5, where your scout will get cold at night. And then you realize, oh yeah, the sun goes down sometimes. Now, this question of how many days you can survive in peak, it's basically just the same question as how long can any one peak run be. I just think it's funny to think of it as the days the scouts survive on the island. Now, when I decided I would answer this question for myself, I thought it would be hard, but I had no idea what I was in for. And that's not even clickbait, I was genuinely miserable. Okay guys, so it's the 10th hour. My room is like 90 degrees Fahrenheit because I've had my PC on. Playing peak. I turned the graphics settings down. Didn't do much. Okay, so I have to explain some boring stuff before we get started so you understand what I'm doing here. First of all, this is an average run. There's no mods that affect gameplay or cheating involved. Basically, if you boot up peak tomorrow, you could do something like this, if you were crazy. Now, how does this run work? Well, in peak, we have one bar for everything. It's health, it's stamina, it's negative effects like poison and hunger. Literally, everything. When it gets filled up with negative statuses, we lose and the run is over. Now, I am an extremely experienced player, so nothing in this game is of any danger to me except for hunger. Hunger is unavoidable. Every minute you're on the island, you get hungrier. So the majority of this challenge comes down to maximizing food, but we do have some important choices to make when it comes to where we're going. So let's review our options. The shore. It's unavoidable to visit the shore. The game always starts here, and it's kind of like the tutorial of the game. Now, shore is actually extremely important to the run, but I'm going to come back to exactly why later. For now, observe the plentiful fruit. Lots of coconuts and other just naturally occurring food sources, which is what we're mainly concerned with at the moment. However, after we summit the shore, we're presented with our first big choice. The next biome can be roots or tropics. Which one are we going to do? Well, let's look at roots first. Roots! I hate roots. In my opinion, it's the most difficult biome even though you travel to it right after the tutorial. However, we can't deny there's a lot of naturally occurring food here. There's 5 different colors of mushrooms, 2 with positive effects, 2 with negative effects, and 1 that could be either, but they're plentiful. However, there's also wind that can blow you off your climb. There's poisonous gas that exists just to make your life miserable. There's also spiders and zombies that can actively seek you out and kill you. Now, because this run involves a lot of me just waiting out the clock, I don't want to be in an area with things that are constantly trying to kill me. And for that reason, we're passing on roots, even though I do think it has a lot of food for us. Instead, we're going to tropics. Now, don't get me wrong, tropics has plenty of stuff that can ruin the run, but all of it is passive. There's poisonous vines. Don't touch them. There's poisonous pods. Don't touch them. There's explosive pods. Just don't touch them. Choosing between 2 dangerous environments where one is passively trying to ruin the run and one is actively trying is an easy choice. But most importantly, tropics has an insane amount of food just lying around. You've got coconuts, normal berries, banana berries, king berries, and even this type of berry I've almost never seen. Seriously, I have 400 hours in this game and I've seen this like 2 times. The most annoying thing here is the rain, and even if it is raining, all we have to do is pause climbing for a couple seconds. Alright, well now that we've settled on tropics, we have perhaps a more difficult choice to make. Alpine or Mesa? Alpine! Now, Alpine is a bit shorter than Mesa, and honestly probably significantly easier, but short's not actually what we want. So Alpine does actually have a surprisingly good amount of naturally occurring food. It's got these orange winter berries that always come in groups of 4 on these trees, and they're not rare, so that's pretty good. But let's check out Mesa. Mesa is long and dangerous. There are tornadoes, tumbleweeds, antlions, dynamite, scorpions, cactuses, and of course, there's the beating sun. Now, despite the risks, I do think it's slightly better because the sheer amount of items here. I'm fairly certain there's more naturally occurring food here in the form of prickleberries, but there's also just more luggage. Now, luggage isn't something we've really talked about yet because it's random. Now, of course there are mods that change that, so I could make it that every luggage contains airline food, one of the best food items in the game, but I'm not interested in that. I want this to be the longest possible run that an average player could get with no outside help. But with more luggage, there's more chances of getting more powerful food items. Anyway, after Mesa, we go to the Caldera. Now, honestly, it looks scary, but it's not so bad. There's still naturally occurring food here in the form of eggs, and as long as we manage the lava flow properly, we'll be okay. It also has 5 guaranteed luggage spawns here at the temple, which could potentially give us more chances of getting powerful food items. There is also one more unique quality about the Caldera that I will discuss later. And finally, the kiln, the last thing stopping us from the peak. Now, there is no naturally occurring food here, but there is still luggage. So the only thing for us to really do is check every luggage and then climb faster than the lava rises from the volcano. Then, the peak, our final destination. Our final destination, but not one that we're trying to get to quickly. How long can we delay crossing into this green paradise? Okay, well, it's time to start. But you should know that there's some bizarre edge cases that pop up that would completely change the nature of this run. And I'll kind of address them as they pop up, except for the big one, which I'll save for the end. Well, here we are. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is comb every square inch of this beach and gather all the food and bring it back to the crash site. In case you didn't know, you can cook food on the little fire from the crash, and cooking food doubles the hunger it restores. So, in order to maximize our food's value, we're going to be cooking absolutely everything that we can. Okay, so there's no game-changing mods, but I am using mods that display the value of every food item, as well as the exact numerical values for hunger. This is just so we don't waste one single hunger point. I also have a mod that tells me how close I am to the campfire meters, because, well, it's finally time to explain what's special about the shore, and why this run is possible at all. In Peak, there's actually another environmental hazard that I haven't mentioned yet, the fog. The fog rises slowly from the bottom of the biome you're in. When it reaches you, it'll almost completely obscure your vision, but more importantly, you'll take cold damage until you succumb to its icy grip. This is sort of like a built-in timer. You have to climb faster than the fog rises, or eventually you'll just die. But the way the fog works in shore is unique. Observe this diagram. So first of all, the fog is technically a sphere that shrinks over time until it reaches the top of the mountain, where it will shrink no further until you light the campfire. That means that once we're at the top of the mountain, we can wait there indefinitely until we light the fire. But now the unique mechanic of shore is that the fog will never trigger until every scout reaches a magic height level. What this means is I'm able to abuse the mechanics of the fog, and as long as I never go above that magic number, the fog will never trigger. Meaning that I can take my time and simply hang out in the shore for as long as I have food to feed me. And that's exactly what my plan was to do. But I'm going to be honest with you, I thought it would be 3 to 4 hours max. Oh, how wrong I was. I'm doing a voiceover now as I'm editing, but when you hear me talk during the run, you can hear the life force slowly leaving my body as the hours drag on and on. Now, what we have here is a poisonous fruit. Don't mind its strange look, that's because I'm colorblind. This is the colorblind setting. But if we cook fruit, they don't poison us anymore. Now, I wish the same was true of mushrooms, but at least for fruit, if we have some way to cook it, we can avoid the negative side effects. Observe my coconut collection. This is going to keep us satiated for, well, frankly, a long time. Well, it's now at the 2-hour mark. Things are, well, they're advancing quite slowly, to be honest. I still have an enormous amount of food. I'm afraid I'm going to be here for at least another 4 hours. And that's just the shore. Oh no. Well, I guess I'll take a nap. I can do karaoke by myself and sing some classic 80s British pop songs. I wanted to be with you alone and talk about the weather. Welcome to your life. You guys ever seen Castaway? There's some parallels here, I think. Wilson! Wilson! Whoa. I left the computer for a couple minutes. I'm almost starved. You see that? I was almost going to pass out for picking up the coconut. Now, at the 3-hour mark, I actually put my PC to sleep and went to the gym. I figured I'd come back and finish up the rest before dinner. And this is where it started to spiral out of control. It takes almost a full 30 minutes for my hunger bar to completely fill up, and it turns out the coconuts are pretty satiating, with 2 cooked coconuts almost completely filling me up by restoring 80 hunger total. Now, I'm kind of kicking myself for not actually counting the total number of coconuts, but I gathered an absolutely enormous amount of food here. So I sat here for the next 10 hours. And actually, there's only 1 coconut left, so we're going to take it with us, the road. And then we're going to start climbing finally. It's 10 hours, 11 minutes, 56 seconds. Time to begin the peak. At the 10-hour mark, I set off on my journey to finally trigger the fog and start the climb. There it is. The fog barrier has been broken. Finally. After 10 hours. And it was with pure fear in my heart because I knew what lay ahead. Essentially, during the climb, I want to gather as much food as I can to bring to the top of the mountain, because eventually the fog will freeze here, and I'll just wait again. Which is exactly what I did. And you can see that I amassed another pretty large amount of coconuts here. The big difference is that you can't cook these because we can't light the fire, otherwise the fog gets reset and it'll push us forward. So we do have to eat these raw, but nevertheless, this is a lot of food. And I just get to sit here and contemplate life while slowly eating it. Okay, slight detour. Now that we're atop the shore, while we're waiting here, it's time to talk about edge case number 1. There are these goofy looking statues at the top of each biome. And when you break them open, they'll give you a mythic item from a pool of powerful and strange tools. So some of these are better than others. Minor shout out to the Curel and Pandora's lunchbox, which would be optimal for making this challenge last slightly longer, as they have the potential to completely restore hunger. However, the main bad boy here is the Book of Bones. Wait, what was that? So, this profane tome, once read, will turn your scout into a skeleton for the rest of the run. As a skeleton, you don't get hungry, so I think you know where this is going. This transforms the challenge from being long to just being infinite, or as long as I care to have my PC heating in my room. Once I finally enter the tropics, this is where I start making my first mistakes. My strategy was to hang out at the bottom of the mountain, just eating as much food as I can, staying just above the fog, climbing only when it absolutely forced me to. But in retrospect, I think what I should have done was climb the mountain as quickly as possible, carry as much food as I can to the top to drop off, then climb down, collect any easy to reach food, and coming back up, repeating this loop as many times as the fog will permit. I'm not sure how much more effective this would be than the strategy I actually used, but my gut feeling says this run is already technically not optimal. I will say that, bizarrely, the astounding length of this run was beginning to affect me mentally. I was pretty nervous climbing here because in my mind I knew if I messed up, that would be throwing away 12 hours of work. Me getting nervous here kind of changes how I play in the next biome. Anyway, here I am again, waiting up the clock, and this is how I spent the majority of this challenge. I cleaned my room a bit, folded all my laundry, started dusting everything, and one major regret I had was not dusting out my PC before this because my room was hot and my PC was running rough. Okay, on to Mesa, which is a legitimately dangerous place. I choose to play cautiously here because if a tornado gets me, which it very easily could, I have to restart. However, a lot of the danger is in this first area before the canyon. Once I get past that, I can relax a little bit, but I still need to outpace the fog, and I'm ashamed to say that in my climbing career, I have died to the fog in Mesa many times. I end up going to the bottom of the canyon because there's sometimes quality luggage down there, but instead, the canyon is a bizarre formation that I've never seen anything like. It's kind of funny that the one time I try to do a weird challenge for myself, I end up seeing something I've never seen before. Peaks level generation is like pseudo-random. They ship, I think, a group of 14 levels like every 2 weeks or something. It's kind of a weird system, but it is legitimately different every day you play. Also, I didn't really mention this, but you can't actually choose which biome you go to. You just have to play on a day that happens to have all the biomes you want. Not a super important detail, but I figured I should include it. Okay, hold up. We're in Mesa now, and there's something that can sometimes happen here. The tomb could be open. If you do a little tomb raiding and make your way across the bottomless abyss here, you'll find Golden Bing Bong. Alright, so this is the heaviest item in the game, but whenever you're actively holding it, you are completely invulnerable to both hunger and damage. So once again, we found a way to stretch this challenge into the infinite territory. There was a point here during the ascent where I kind of panicked because I just wasn't finding the route, but it was just my nerves getting to me. I did find the route. But like I said, I'm playing a bit different now. I went up to the campfire early, dropped off all my food, and went down to find more. But the fog was basically right there, so all it got me was a few extra prickleberries. So now I'm at the top of Mesa, and it's just like the other biomes, right? Wait here until I eat all my food, but then it occurred to me, and this is the special quality to Caldera that I alluded to earlier. There is no element in Caldera that would cause me to rush. There's no fog, there's no lava like the kiln that pushes me up. Caldera is unique in the sense that I can truly take as long as I want, so I figure why not? I'll just go hunt for eggs right away instead of waiting, since at this point I could carry all of the food I had. With no real sense of urgency, I casually stroll all around the caldera. Something handy you can do here is cook food on the hot rocks, as long as it doesn't glitch, that is. So we get a little more value out of all the food that we find in the way. I also have to check every spire in case there's luggage on top, which in itself takes a long time. And as I'm roaming around the map, I also search every nook and cranny for eggs, which leads to the great egg tragedy. As I was gathering all my food at the end of Caldera to do my typical routine, sadly, 2 of my eggs became desynced, meaning I could no longer touch them. Alright, so we have a tragic problem right here. I left these eggs here earlier so I could go get the other eggs out there, and now they're desynced. This is sort of a common issue that happens. Now, I could cheat these eggs in, but I don't think that's in the spirit of this challenge. So I think we're just gonna have to take the L here. I can't pick these up, so now the run is -2 eggs. That's just tragic. So now I can definitely say the run is not optimal, as we've lost 2 valuable eggs to spaghetti code. Besides that, there's not really a lot to say about Caldera, and we move on to the final area. Okay, so similar to Caldera, there's no reason to wait here if we can carry all of our food. Our mission here is to check every luggage, but beyond that, there's nothing to do. I just climb quickly, outpace the lava, and loot the luggage. In terms of loot, I only had 1 lucky pull. I got scout cookies, which is actually a god tier item, but beyond that, pretty much completely uneventful. I'll let my past self take the narration from here, but to be fair to me, I was kind of going insane, so don't judge me too harshly. That's kind of it. Now all I do is sit here and wait till my hunger bar is almost completely full, and then I cross that finish line, light the flare, and we have possibly the longest game of Peak in Peak history. Alright guys, I know this is heartbreaking, but I made a critical mistake. When I lit the fire to come into the kiln, I forgot to cook my marshmallow, which means we're losing a whole 15 hunger on this raw marshmallow. It's just simply not as nutritious. Unoptimal. Okay, I've eaten every food item. The lava has completely risen, and I have less than half hunger. It has now been 17 hours, and it is 6 a.m. I think I'm done. I can't take it anymore. This is as close to optimal as I can do. We did miss out on those 2 eggs. Let's see. Final count. $103. Oh. Not only is it possible to get over 100, which I I'm actually completely stunned by, but I managed to do it. Oh, man. I had no idea. So, when I thought of this challenge, or I got the idea to do this, I thought it was going to be 6 hours, tops. I thought it was going to be a solid 3 hours in shore, and then maybe, you know, a couple more hours for each biome. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Alright, well, I'm going to bed. That's it. That's it. It's finally over. It's finally over. Well, that right there is probably the world's longest game of Peak. Not that anyone has really cared to do it. I guess this is how speedrunners feel. Wait, why does that say another hour beyond the time on my timer? Okay, so let me take over for my past self here. I believe the discrepancy between the time that it shows on the scouting report versus the time that it showed on my mod was because I put my PC to sleep to go to the gym. And I think I was at the gym for roughly the difference in time. So the whole time the computer was asleep, for whatever reason the game was still counting, but the mod didn't. So the more accurate number, I believe, is the 17-hour one. And we can kind of verify that with some quick math, because 17 hours divided by the 10-minute day cycle equals about 103 days. So the real time was about 17 hours. So I guess we can just sit here and watch the world's longest and slowest peak report graph play out. You'll see each flat was where I just sat for hours and hours and hours. And of course, that's at the shore, then at the top of the shore, then at the top of tropics, then at the top of Mesa, which was my shortest rest, and then pretty much straight through Caldera and the Kiln. Well, I guess that's probably my biggest gaming accomplishment ever. I may have played the world's longest game of Peak. I don't know. I don't even know if anyone else has cared to try. But yeah. I did it. I'm kind of oddly proud of it. But wait, you didn't forget about the final edge case, did you? The big one? The specter of doom that hung over my head the entire time I was doing this run? Okay, so this is the final edge case, the one I've been saving for last, and that's Tenderfoot. So this game has 9 difficulties in all, and we played this run on the base difficulty because I thought it was the most relevant. In higher difficulties, you get hungrier much faster, so the amount of time you can survive is going to be much less. But Tenderfoot, well, Tenderfoot is the special easy baby mode of the game. In Tenderfoot, not only is hunger 30% less, but there is no fog. Period. That means there's no time limit in each biome, which frees us to quite literally consume every single piece of food in the entire game as we drag ourselves at an insanely glacial pace across the mountain. Now, I did a little math just based on some rough numbers from the challenge run I just did. It took me roughly 12 hours to complete the shore in totality, and I'll say I consumed roughly 75% of the total food. So let's say I could have survived 16 hours if I ate absolutely everything. Now, in Tenderfoot, where hunger is 30% less, I could have stretched that into 30% more time. We're now looking at 20.8 hours for the shore. Now, For each of the standard biomes, I'm just going to say that they're exactly the same as the shore. So that's roughly 62.4 hours. Plus the very conservative estimate of the 2 hours I spent in the kiln and the caldera, bringing us to a 64.4 hour run, which is 3,880 minutes. And if each day cycle is 10 minutes long, that means 388 days on the island. Yes, I believe literally more than a year of in-game time is possible. But, I'm not going to do it. Unless you pay me.